The sound of the surging waves echoed through the dilapidated warehouse via the speakerphone of a cell phone. Grant's voice was indifferent, carrying a lazy and slightly tipsy tone. Miley Adarsh, you're really persistent in bothering me now. Yesterday you instigated my mom, trying to force a marriage on me. Today you resort to kidnapping? If you want to die, then go ahead. Don't delay my time with my darling watching the sunrise. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Grant Musso. Tears of fear fell onto the ropes, binding my hands and feet. I shook my head, urgently trying to explain to him. I'm not acting. I'm not putting on a show. I also don't know why your mother suddenly went to the media to announce our engagement. Please, believe me once, and come to rescue me. Can you? Ha, rescue you? Fine. Grant sneered coldly, saying, the ransom is 50 million, right? I'll pay. Upon hearing this, the kidnappers immediately spoke. In 5 hours, at East River Bay, exchange the money for the person. Forget about the person. You can keep her tied up. I'm not in a hurry to save her. In Grant's voice, there was a clear disdain and mockery. Let her learn to behave. It's fine not to bother me anymore. This money can be considered as your hard work in training her. Are you serious? The two kidnappers looked at each other, questioning. Grant coldly smiled, a hint of inexplicable ruthlessness in his smile. As long as you dare to touch her, I dare to pay. Tears burst forth, and in extreme sorrow, I closed my eyes. Grant, so you actually despise me to this extent. Grant, I cried with tears, unwilling to give up. I'm really kidnapped. I don't need training. As long as you come to save me, I will never pester you again in the future. Grant, the sun has risen. The cheerful laughter of a lively woman suddenly came through the receiver. The girl on the other end of the phone joyfully exclaimed, it's so beautiful, MMM. The sound of lips touching, saliva mingling, was so clear even on this end of the phone. It's not hard to imagine how intense and profound that kiss was. Despair engulfed me, my heart turned to ashes, and I completely gave up struggling. Sitting on the ground, I numbly stared at the ring on the ring finger that Grant had given me, and a smile crept onto my face. It turns out that the promise made in youth really cannot be counted on. Grant Musso, who at 16 vowed to marry me, to protect me for a lifetime. How did he change along the way to adulthood? I'm sorry, Grant Musso, it's my fault. I've been bothering you for so many years. I'm sorry. I won't do it anymore. Never again. There was a moment of silence on the phone, followed by a sudden hang-up. The busy tone echoed throughout the warehouse. The two kidnappers glanced at each other. The youngest one scratched his head, looking confused. What does he mean? Did he want to save her or not? Why do I feel like his words, as long as you dare to touch her, sounds more like a threat to us? The man opposite gritted his teeth fiercely. Who cares what he means? Anyway, we want money. This woman is the fiance officially acknowledged by the Musso family in the news yesterday. As long as we film a sex video of her, we don't need to worry about Grant not paying. Saying that, he took out a white handkerchief from his pocket. Without hesitation, he covered my head, pressing it against my nose. A strange fragrance rushed into my nostrils, making my head dizzy. The shirt ripped apart with a tearing sound, and the kidnapper's fierce voice sounded above me. Stop talking and have fun with her. But the young kidnapper hesitated. We were originally planning to keep her for 2 days. Now Grant is not in a hurry to rescue her. I'm afraid that if it takes too long, what if the young master finds out? The fierce man suddenly threw away the cigarette in his mouth and cursed. So what if he finds out? Do you really believe he will turn over a new leaf and quit his dark ways? He's just putting on a show as the new boss. After the Cardone family has been in Mafia for so many years, if he goes legit, what will he eat and drink? Use your brain. If we are discovered, we can just hand her over to him to play with. His methods of training people are much better than ours. Oh, is that so? Suddenly, the warehouse door was opened, and a tall man in a black coat walked in slowly, followed by several burly bodyguards. The man's light eyes swept over them, and he sneered. Why don't you try today, to see how I train people? The two kidnappers trembled all over at his words, and knelt down in unison before the man. Master. The fierce man, with a pale face, hurriedly pointed at me. We found a girl for you. Absolutely exciting. Look at her. We've drugged her, so you can use her directly. The man's brows furrowed, then his gaze shifted to me, with a hint of darkness in his eyes. Although he had an extraordinarily handsome face, I was terrified to the core by him. Even though my body was starting to feel a little warm, I couldn't help but shiver and curl my body backward. Seeing this, the man raised an eyebrow slightly. He then walked over, squatted in front of me, and pulled out a folding knife from his pocket. His cold voice sounded even colder to me than the gleaming blade. It might hurt a bit, bear with it. I'll send you away now. Send me away? Don't. Please don't kill me. The tension in my mind completely shattered, and the desire to survive ignited my courage. With my bound hands tightly gripping him, I blinked tears and looked at him, pleading in my voice. Please, don't kill me. I can figure out how much money you want. I really don't want to die in these 2 years. Please. The man lowered his eyes, his gaze sweeping over my hands holding onto him, pausing, the corners of his eyebrows raised with interest, his voice low. What's wrong with dying in these 2 years? I couldn't help but choke. Was that the point? But I also dared not answer. Because I lowered my head, whispering, I'm too young to die in this life. I haven't enjoyed much happiness yet. Dying now really isn't appropriate. The man's expression clearly froze. His thin lips then slightly pursed, a hint of a smile flashed at the corner of his mouth. I, however, had no mood to notice, because a wave of heat surged within me with a sweeping trend. In the fear of death and being raped by many, I quickly calculated the chips that could save my life. Then, I boldly leaned over and gently kissed the man's lips. I'll behave, won't resist. Whatever you do to me, it's fine. The whole warehouse fell into a deathly silence. The man's eyes suddenly darkened, his Adam's apple moved slightly, but he didn't speak. I bit my lip, vaguely seeing a glimmer of hope. My bound arms lifted and fell, grabbing onto his neck. Then, I kissed him again, but the man gently held my neck, pushed me away, and created distance between us. He stared into the depths of my eyes, dark and mysterious. I didn't plan to kill you. If you regret now, there's still time. I can find another man for you. Once you're with me, there's no turning back. The heat surged, my eyes were already blurred. I nestled shyly into his arms, shaking my head. I'm with you. No regrets. Since my innocence was doomed not to be preserved, I might as well find a handsome one. The next moment, our lips and tongues were entangled. The man tightened his grip on the back of my head. In the hotel's bathroom, the shower was running noisily. The panting and ambiguity raised the temperature steadily. With my hands raised above my head, the man pinned me against the wall, dominating. Yet his fingers could still distract, teasingly touching the ring on my finger, his thin lips gently curved. You have a fiancé, dare you still seduce me? Do you really think I'm a good person? The warm water made it hard for me to open my eyes. My whole body weakened, almost unable to stand, my consciousness already blurred. I don't have a fiancé, the ring. I don't want it anymore. Ha, no wonder you're a virgin. The man leaned close to my lips, hoarsely chuckling, taking off that ring. If you don't want it, then give it back to him. My arms were then let down. I slid down weakly, only able to quickly cling to the man's strong back muscles. Moans escaping my mouth, incoherent and out of tune. Luis Cardone, that's my name. The man whispered seductively in my ear. Call me. Ah, I screamed, my nails scratching his back. Luis. On the beach lounger. A coquettish woman lay in Grant's arms, slightly protesting his distraction. She then leaned in to kiss his lips. Grant, however, turned his head to avoid it. Frowning at the phone on the table next to him that hadn't rung again, he furrowed his brows. Miley, give me a call again. If you call once more, I'll believe you. After staring at the phone for over 20 times in 4 hours, is it necessary? If you're really worried about her, go check on her. Mateo Earls, a friend lounging nearby, observed his reaction and couldn't help but shake his head in resignation. Back then, with just one proposal, you stirred up her heart. Now that you've grown up, you turn cold-hearted, wanting to play the field, finding her annoying, clingy, and controlling. Over these years, your reputation for being a playboy has spread far and wide. Your mother is anxious, wanting to push you to settle down and marry through the media, which is quite normal. It's not necessarily Miley's idea, and I've reminded you countless times, hearts do grow cold. No one will wait for you forever. Do you think your little bit of credit from your youth can be overdrawn several times? Don't wait until she leaves you heartbroken before you regret it. Grant's fingers paused slightly, lowering his gaze in silence for a while, only letting out a cold scoff. I won't regret it. Tying yourself to one person for a lifetime is too boring. I wish she would leave quickly. Don't cling to me with that bit of affection from my teenage years. It's really annoying, to the core. Upon hearing this, Mateo furrowed his brow. Just as he was about to say something else, Grant, not wanting to hear more, he got up, opened a bottle of champagne, and as the liquid sprayed, it mingled with the crowd of revelers on the beach. Mateo pursed his lips, muttering under his breath, he will regret soon. Suddenly, a dark shadow loomed before him. Mateo was stunned, looking at Grant, who had returned with a playful look in his eyes. Grant, with a cold face, picked up his phone. Just as he unlocked the screen, the ringtone chimed in. Mr. Musso, the caller was his assistant. Someone just delivered something to the company. It's for you. The sender is Miss Adarsh. Grant sneered coldly, a hint of disdain in his eyes. Suddenly, he felt foolish for worrying about Miley Adarsh's actions. She sent a ring, and as I see it, the assistant paused. It looks like the one Miss Adarsh always wears. Grant's pupils suddenly contracted. Say that again. What? The assistant quickly sent over the photo of the ring. Grant recognized it at a glance. It was the proposal ring he gave to Miley when he confessed to her at the age of 16. Miley cherished it and always wore it on her hand. Grant suddenly felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. But in the end, it was all covered by anger, typing swiftly in the chat box. Are you playing this cat and mouse game of threatening me again? Miley Adarsh, the ring is returned, and we can truly be done with each other. Don't bother me again in the future. The messages were sent out, but seemed to disappear without a trace. In the past, the chat box always had instant replies, but this time there was no response. Grant anxiously scrolled through the messages. The chat history was filled with Miley's one-sided care and concern for him. A cold smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Of course, how could Miley not like him? Her little act was just a play. This time, he was determined to teach her a lesson. Grant simply turned off his phone, cutting off her chance to regret forget and make amends. Then he stood up abruptly, vigorously shaking the champagne bottle. Bang! The wine splattered as Grant smashed the bottle on the floor. He turned around, embracing the woman in his arms, laughing wildly. I'm in a good mood today. Let's celebrate. The next day when I woke up, Luis was not in the room. Being kidnapped for the first time, I had no idea what the process was after sleeping with the boss of the kidnappers. Should I continue waiting for someone to come and ransom me? Or should I accept being his forever, following him? Or maybe, looking at the empty room and my unbound hands and feet, I thought, should I try to walk out directly? The clothes on the floor were in disarray, shirts and stockings torn. I could only pick up Luis's oversized shirt and put it on, tiptoeing towards the door. Suddenly, from the balcony behind me, came Luis's sneering laughter. They are your confidants, not mine. In my eyes, they are not under my command, still loyal to the remnants of your former regime. They did such things, even if I cripple them, it's considered lenient. As he spoke, the door to the balcony was open. Luis walked out without noticing me by the door. He slightly moved the phone away from his ear, seemingly receiving some vulgar scolding on the other end. The smile on Luis's face turned colder. Dad, don't forget, the Cardone group is under my control now. If they break my rule of quitting the Mafia business, I won't even spare their ashes. You better not lose your temper either. After speaking, without waiting for a response, Luis hung up the phone directly. His gaze lifted slightly, and then he saw me. After a few seconds of staring blankly, the gloom in his eyes was replaced by a hint of playful smile. So you used me up and now you want to run?